just doing what may or may not be a quick build video here. Once again, I'm preparing for a 5th edition Champions Hero System campaign. My own, choosing my own creation, so to speak. I will be using the Hero Designer 6 software package to design a lot of the monsters, a lot of the equipment and so forth in this setting. So I want to both highlight and show the versatility of the system, the versatility of the software, as well as give some good source material for my players that may be seeing these videos to look at. For anyone else, this is not a game, this is prep for a game. And if you have any comments or suggestions, please feel free to submit them. If you're tuning in, feel free to set them in the chat window. That said, let's begin. I'm going to be doing a monster today. As stated, we're using 5th edition rules. I'm going to be using heroic rules, even though when building monsters, such things really don't apply. I mean, I'm going to make the monster the way I want it to be, and we'll worry about points after it's all said and done. With that said, the particular monsters, we'll put that in the character name spot, and this one is going to be the dreaded Basilisk. I've never seen this monster done up in Hero System, and I've never seen it really used, and I'm not sure how much, if I will use it, but it seemed like an interesting build, a complicated and complex build, given that the Basilisk by tradition, can turn people to stone by merely gazing at them. Hello, Wondergoon. Glad you can join us. So we can fill in the genre. It's fantasy setting. There's no player. And the GM is good old me. Alright. So, the first thing I'm going to start with, or the thing I'm going to start with, in this case, is going to be powers. Because I want to get a sense for where we go with this build before I start trying to put in any kind of characteristics or anything like that. That said, the first thing is the basilisk should not be this gigantic, monstrous thing, but is actually a lizard. So, at least according to all the lore that I know about such critters. So the first power we're going to give it is shrinking. The shrinking power reduces the size of the individual as well as its mass. It gives it, as we can see, a bonus or a penalty to other people seeing the creature or person, and give them a bonus to their DCV, their defensive combat value. Makes them harder to hit. And finally, makes it where they're more easily knocked back. Sorry, when you don't have as much mass and things like that and size, you tend to get blown away when something strikes you. So these are the things that shrinking does. Now, the normal height or length in this case is going to be 2 meters roughly. That's considered normal human in this game setting. So within certain parameters of that, because as you can see, the shrinking power with 1 level of shrinking makes you half that height at 1 meter, and instead of roughly 100 kilograms mass, you now have 12.5 kilograms of mass. Now, 2 levels of shrinking on this critter, and that's going to make it essentially half a meter long, so about 2.5 feet, and about 1.5 kilograms, which is going to be roughly in the neighborhood of 3 to 3.5 pounds. So this sounds reasonable for a lizard. Now, one thing I've got to watch out for in doing this, though, is that makes the perception rolls at -4. So this is going to be a critter that's at that size that's very easy to overlook it's also going to be very difficult to hit as it gets +4 to its DCV. But if you do hit it, you're going to send it flying because it gets +6 inches to any knockback consideration. And remember, if you've not been with other videos I've done on this, these are game inches, which the setting is usually played on a mat that gives 1-inch diameter hexagons, and hence why we say hexes and things like that. And each game inch is therefore actually equivalent to in-game 2 meters of distance. So right off the bat, this critter, if it takes any body, which is where you start when calculating knockback, you're going to add 6 onto that. Wow. So maybe we'll make it a little bigger and just keep it at 1 level of shrinking. I don't want this thing, people just dropping and turning to stone because they unknowingly met its eyes with theirs. So this seems far more reasonable, even though it's really much larger than what I had originally intended. That said, moving along, let's add some modifiers to this, because shrinking normally takes endurance, energy to maintain, but this is a natural state of the creature, so it's 0 endurance, persistent, it doesn't shut off when they're knocked unconscious or something to that effect. And on limitations, we're also going to add this one called always on, and I've got to add it because there's an advantage called inherent. Inherent means this is a property of the creature, of the character, and it means it's not susceptible to being suppressed or dispelled. These are 2 powers that allow you to weaken another power, weaken its effect. So in this case, we've made it now with it being inherent, as this is a property of the basilisk. It is 1 meter long, it is 12.5 kilograms, and there's nothing you can do about that. You can't suppress the power, dispel the power, and suddenly it's normal human sized. It's not going to work. Now those are the only advantages we need. So now we have do we need any other limitations on it? And I think the answer is no, because, typical common things used are things like focus and gestures, incantations. All of these are not appropriate. So we're done. And now our basilisk is smaller than a person, but still about a meter, about 3 feet long. That's what I'm saying. This is now a large lizard. All right. Now, lizards can usually bite, so that's going to be a killing attack against, a hand killing attack against PD. Now, it's a fairly small critter, so we're only going to make it half die 6. I think that's appropriate for its bite. And are we going to add any modifiers to it? I don't think so. So that one is done. It does have claws, so we're going to add another hand-killing attack for the claws. Again, they're only going to do half a die 6. But, that said, we are going to add a limitation called reduced penetration. Now, I'll call up the definition for that so people can read along. A reduced penetration attack is an attack brought with this limitation has less ability to penetrate defenses than a normal attack. Reduced penetration splits the attack into 2 equal parts for the purposes of determining body damage and applying that damage to the target's defenses. Essentially, if you have any resistant defense, which there's 2 types of defense in Hero System, there's normal defense, which works against normal attacks, and there's resistant defense, which works against killing attacks. Resistant defense is armor. Your skin, normal skin, does not have any resistant defense. Against a killing attack, therefore, you have no defense. If your defense is normal, then a killing attack blows right through it. If you have resistant defense, then that gets applied normally or regularly, I guess I should say, to the damage that's incoming from this. So this basilisk's reduced penetrating attack with its claws is going to be split up. Instead of a half die 6, it's going to be a one body, 2 attacks. So if you have even 1 point of resistant defense, this thing does nothing. These claws do nothing to you. If you have no resistant defense, it's going to be something you notice. This is a little bit worse than your cat scratching you, unless your cat really dug its claws in. So that, and I guess I ought to name these so that when the time comes, I know which is which. So bite and claws. And Wonder Goon has asked something here. Yes, I could definitely put reduced penetration on the bite as well. But I don't know necessarily that it's an issue of the shrinking. But you know what? The more I think about it, I'm not thinking of this thing as being fanged and having crocodile teeth. So you know what? I'm going to go with your suggestion there, Wonder Goon. And we're going to make it reduce penetration as well. But I'm going to do something else with it. What's something that lizards can do? If you've ever played with chameleons, little anoles here in America, little green lizards that can change color. What's one thing they do when they bite you? They chomp on. So we're going to make it reduce penetration, but we're going to make it continuous. In other words, when it bites, it tends to bite and latch on and hold on. So it can continue to do damage each phase that it attacks instead of attacking you anew with the bite. So this now seems far more reasonable for our little basilisk. I think you might agree. So that was actually a good suggestion there, Wonder Goon. So thank you. And finally, though, we're going to get to the power of the hour. And good and painful. Yes, that's kind of the idea. But we're going to now get to the power of the hour, which is the ability to turn people to stone. People are things. Now, in Champions powers terms, that's going to be a transform. Now you'll notice that it's got this little stop sign outside it. That's because this is a particularly potent and powerful power. It can do some very nasty and, shall we say, irreversible effects. So first off, I'm going to define it. Pull up the definition. A character with a transform can change a target into something else or impose a lasting change on it. So the reason the basilisk's stone turning ability is a transform is because he is transforming a normal creature, normal living creature, to a stone creature of that type. So that's definitely changing significantly the character of the target. That said, there are several options on transform. There is a cosmetic transform. This would allow you to change the color of the hair, or change eye color, or change the tone of voice. Something like this. It's a cosmetic change. It does not overtly or potently, game-changingly change the character. Then there's the minor transform. The minor transform would be, I can change you from a male to a female or a female to a male. I can change you, I can't change you in a major significant way, but I can change your character within the group of critter that you are, or the group of objects that you are. Like I could, with a minor transform, could transform a dagger into a sword. I at least would allow that as being a minor transform. You've not significantly changed the character of the item, you have simply lengthened it, if that makes sense. If you also notice, the cosmetic transform only costs 5 points per die 6 of effect. When we bump it up to minor transform, it goes up to 10 points per die of effect. Changing something to stone, a living creature into stone of that type of creature, though, that's a major transformation. That's 15 points per die 6. Now, I'm also going to, you also have to do something. Let's just go through. And we'll name this Basilisks, if I can spell tonight, gaze. You have to specify something that heals it back. Bottom line, transform is permanent-ish, but it can heal back as normal wounds heal back, but it can also have a specified method of healing you back. And in this case, it would have to be dispelled or countered, I'm going to call it. Basically, you have to get a spell of transmuting back from stone to flesh, or something similar to allow this to be healed. Otherwise, it's a statue pretty much permanently. So transform X into Y, living creature to stone creature. Or actually, we'll leave the creature off. Just put it to stone. Don't want people thinking that maybe we're talking about the creature stays the same. It's just now made out of stone. The deer can still just hop off away. It's just now granite. Yeah, that's not going to work. That's not what's intended. So there we go. Now, because I want this effect to be a set amount. This should be able to, I'm going to turn on standard effect. What this means is that instead of rolling 1 die 6, this attack at 1 die 6 is just going to do 3 points of effect. It'll do 3 points of effect per die. This takes out the randomness of it. But now that I'm thinking about it, and this is why I'm sitting here going, I'm going to leave it random. Because sometimes you got close, but you didn't meet its eyes. And that's what not rolling the amount of effect could represent. You got close, you were dumb, you knew it was there, and yet you still looked towards its face. But it didn't quite meet and connect, and so you're fine. That said, this gaze attack should turn at least the average person, if not the superhuman person, to stone immediately. So we want because this is against the body of the target, and the average person is going to have 10 bodies. So I need 10 points of effect on average to stone the average person. So that's going to require, since the average on a die 6 is considered to be 3.5, 7 for 2 and 10.5 for 3 dice. So we want this gaze attack to be at least 3 die 6. But I want adventurers, hardened and hardy souls, to be worried about this. So we're going to crank that up to 4. We're going to make it expensive and crank it up to 6 die 6. This means on average it's going to do what? Have 14, let's see, 7 for every 2 die 6. So 7, 14, 21 points on average of effect. This is something to worry even the hardiest and sturdiest of souls. So, there we go. A 6 die 6 major transform. This is a major power. It's got 90 active points, which is a get right now, which is a measure of power is. And right now it also has a real cost of 90 points. So, yeah, this is expensive. And this is why I made mention of the fact we'll make the points work at the end of the day, as opposed to actually worrying about it going in. So now we call up our modifiers. And what other modifiers do we want? Area of effect, right? Okay, no, I won't do that. Area effect would mean at everyone within an area, like I could put a cone, everyone in a cone in front of the critter would be affected by this power. Yeah, that would be, already this power is an ouch. That would be just, let's squeeze some lemon juice into that paper cut and rub some salt in there just for good measure. So we're not going to do that. We won't make it continuous, even though it continuously. Bottom line, the critters got to look at you, each individual by one. Difficult to dispel. I put there, but I don't think I will. What that would do is it would double the active points of the power for purposes of dispelling it, or suppressing it. In other words, it would make this power be 180 active points for purposes of trying to dispel or suppress it, to revert this thing to being a normal lizard, in other words. For dispel, what you do is you buy a certain number of dice, you throw the dice, total it up, and that many active points of the power are dispelled. With dispel, it's all or nothing. If what you roll on the dice is greater than the active points of the power, it's dispelled. Its effect goes away. If, on the other hand, with a suppress, the total that you roll on the dice is actually subtracted out of the power, the strength of the power. So, in other words, with this power, 90 active points, if I have a dispel and try to dispel it, I've got to roll 90 points worth on my dice. Okay? With a suppress, I roll the total, and let's say I got 25 points of effect. Well, now this power would be reduced by 25 points down to 65 points, which would put it at 4 die 6. 4 die 6 plus 1. So, well, why wouldn't somebody just use suppress? That's a very good question. The thing is you can't, suppression isn't cumulative. So, generally speaking, you're probably not going to turn a power off with suppress, but you will with dispel. By the same token, hello there, Zero Theory. And let's see what you've said. And you played Champions back in the day. This is very similar. I'm guessing since you know Hero System. So there we go. We're setting up a critter today. So glad you could join us. I'll just put it that way. We're trying to get a basilisk's gaze, transforming people into stone. Continuing on with that, the power does not do knockback, explosion, mega scale, lingering. We're not going to make it line of sight, but we do have to add, I think. No, we don't. Okay. I thought I would have to add ranged onto it because I'm thinking that transform, in my head, it was a no ranged power, like another power called drain. It is not. So there we go. So all or nothing. I've never seen that as a limitation, but we will continue on with limitations now. We will make this a beam attack. The lizard can't choose to use it at a reduced level or reduced effect. It is 100% all the time, and that's what beam does. Is your power goes in a straight line. It can't bounce. It can't be spread. It is a beam that goes straight at the target and is at full power all the time. So that seems appropriate. Let's see. We do have a limitation on it, limited power. Here we go. But we're only going to put a very small value on this, which is, the limitation is must target must meet gaze. In other words, you've got to meet its eyes. There you go. I hope that answers your question, Zero Theory. Yes, you must meet the creature's eyes. It's not just it can look at you and you're turned to stone. That would be just way too much. So there we go with that. None of the other limitations strike me. How do I educate that the player has looked in its eyes? Basically, on first contact, when you first see it, we're going to have to work something out with that. I'm going to say probably a dex check. Would have to say they avert their gaze. Exactly. I'm going to say dex check when you first notice it, or you've risked meeting their eyes. Once that happens, now you get the chance to say, hey, I'm keeping my eyes off. All right. Or something to that effect. Also, that's why I left off the use stand, because now there's a thing, I throw my 6 dice, and if I don't get your body or greater, it does nothing to you. You didn't meet its gaze, if that makes sense. You know, you were gazing close enough, or close, but the fact that the power didn't affect you says it wasn't there. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. So basically, the danger is actually, and this is held true with this type of monster in other game systems. The danger really is when you're not expecting it, and you first encounter the critter. Because after that, you're able to go, whoa, whoa. But on that initial contact, you know, to use the terminology of another gaming system, roll the saving throw. So I think we're done with that, and it's still a very expensive power. It's still 90 active points. We've reduced the real cost to 60, so this is still very expensive. And it's showing me this nice little warning. This attack exceeds the maximum active points for an attack set in the campaign rules. So this critter violates the rules I have established for PCs, or even NPCs, to be honest. If you're not a monster, or a monstrous being, this rule would apply. This is too much. This is too big. But, there we go. So we've done the powers for our nice little basilisk. Now I'm going to come back and do some characteristics. Alright. Characteristics. It should be noted that anything from comeliness up, so strength, dex, constitution, body, intelligence, ego, presence, and comeliness, are what we call the base characteristics. You buy them and you get this 10 base that you work from. From PD on down through stun are what are known as figured characteristics. All of them are figured from one of the base characteristics up at the top. For instance, PD is your strength divided by 5. 10 divided by 5 is 2. ED is your con divided by 5. So that again in this case right now is 2. and so forth. Speed, for instance, is your dex divided by 10 plus 1. So Dark Critter has a speed of 2 right now. So that said, this creature is small, so it should not be full strength. It's a lizard. So we're going to reduce its strength down to 5. That seems reasonable to me anyway. It's going to be fairly quick and nimble though, so I'm going to jack up its dexterity a bit. That seems reasonable to me. It's how big is it? It's 1 meter long. It had I gave it shrinking, 1 level of shrinking, so it's 1 meter long. It's a bit longer than I really wanted it to be, but 2 levels of shrinking made it half a meter long, which is what I wanted. But that would have made it -4 to perception rolls against it, so it'd been very hard to spot before it was too late, and it would have had +6 inches of knockback, so it would have been just flying around anytime somebody struck it. So I limited it to one level of shrinking, so it's half a meter. That said, you will notice that the system is prone to this, and every gamer I know that works with the hero system does this. There is a certain amount of min-maxing, of power gaming, if you will, that goes on when setting characteristics, because there are breakpoints. For instance, PD is strength divided by 5. So, you'll see a lot of people make that if they want a little bit lower strength to represent that they're weak, but not too much. They'll put their strength as 8, and as you can see, they still get the PD of 2. At 5, this critter's got a PD of 1. That reminds me, we're going to have to go back and give it 1. I'll get to that in a little bit. It's not terribly important right now. Wondergoon looks guilty. Exactly. I don't know of a player who doesn't do a certain amount of this on the characteristics, and like myself, we allow it. It's understandable given the nature of the mechanics of the system. So that said, constitution of this lizard, I'm going to leave at 10. It's not super robust, but it's not a scrawny weakling either. I mean, the thing probably eats stuff that would churn our stomach, right? I am going to reduce its body a little bit, down to 8, because it is small, so it does not have as much body. Body is one of the 2 types of hit points in this system. When you run out of body, you are dead. When you run out of stun down here, you are unconscious, you are knocked out. So I'm reducing its body a little bit, also to represent the fact that it is smaller than normal. Its intelligence, I'm going to reduce that way down. The little critter is not smart. It is a lizard. It is got a little bit of cunning and everything so that it can sneak up on prey, but it's not smart. It's not a small critter. It also doesn't have much in the way of willpower, so I'm going to reduce that to 5. When frightened or anything, its reaction is going to be, honestly, to try to get away. The stone turning is just an unfortunate defense mechanism, right? Okay. Its presence, I'm actually going to jack up a little bit. Presence is your aura of authority, your presence. And in fact, it can be used to attack, as we see over here, presence attack, PRE attack. To envision a presence attack, most people use the example of a police officer going, "Halt! Freeze!" The police officer is using his authority, his presence, to attack you, and you can resist that with either your own presence or your ego, your willpower. If you're a big burly guy, you may say, I'll take my chances, and you'll keep on going. You've got presence of your own. If you're just strong-willed, you may say, I can get away from him. In this case, the critter isn't strong-willed. We only have a 5 ego. Oops. Oh. The machine talked to me. Thank you, Zero Theory, for following. So the presence of 15 on this critter, though, I'm doing that because if somebody spots it, they're probably going to go, expletive, basilisk, and run away. Hopefully that makes sense. By the same token, it's going to try to get away from danger, but it's not going to be too particularly impressed by you going, freeze! Now, making your arms spread out and will probably help ooze it along. But that's why I'm giving it the 15 presence is because its presence is pretty strong. People don't want to be around a basilisk. All right. We are now down into the figured characteristics, and you can buy those up as well. And in fact, I'm going to buy its PD back up to 2. Because it is scaly. And that brings up the power that I didn't buy yet. And that is going to be the power to give some of that, due to its scaly hide, damage resistance. Now, I'm only going to give it 1 PD and 1 ED of damage resistance. But what this means is that its hide will, to a degree, stop a knife or some other weapon, a killing attack, another basilisk's bite, for instance. So, now back to characteristics. We now have 2 points of PD and ED, 1 point of each is resistant. So it's not defenseless against weapons and everything. Its speed of 2. Now I could be mean. I could be very mean. And because the dexterity is 15, that's 1.5 plus 1. The speed is actually 2.5. So I could spend 5 points. And glad you could join us, Tri-Nomad. I could spend 5 points and jack this speed on this basilisk up to 3. What that means is in Hero System, each combat turn is divided into 12 1-second segments. And your speed sets your phases. In other words, which segments within the turn you get to take an action on. So with the speed of 2, this critter's phases are 6 and 12. It acts on segment 6 and segment 12. Now, I could be mean, like I said, spend 5 points, jack that up to 3, and now it goes on 4, 8, and 12, and has the potential to stone 3 people in one turn, 1 12-second turn. I think you can understand why I'm kind of disinclined towards doing that to my poor players. If they meet one of these critters, it's going to be bad enough that twice a turn they're going to have to work out how they're avoiding meeting its eyes without adding insult to injury and making it a speed 3. Alright, so we're going to move down here to recovery. And recovery is exactly. Don't be a jerk, right, Wonder Gun? The recovery is how rapidly a character or a creature regains endurance and stun, the next 2 things down. Endurance is the amount of energy you have to power things like your use of strength or powers that require power, which reminds me, I do have to change the gaze of the basilisk here in a minute. Especially since you're one of the players. Exactly, Wonder Goon. You don't want that. Okay, so this recovery is how fast you regain that endurance and stun. You can, at any time, take your action, one of your phases, to take a recovery. And you add that 3 back to your endurance and to your stun. If you've taken any stun damage or you've used any endurance. Um, or post segment 12, as it's termed, after everybody's moved on segment 12, um, everybody gets a recovery. So everybody adds their recovery stat back to their endurance and stun if they've used any endurance or taken any stun damage. So this basilisk has a recovery of 3. I'm going to bump that by 1.4. All right. I'm going to leave its endurance at 20, but I'm going to bump its stun up to 20 as well. This is, again, or you also see some min-maxing in, because some people would come back here and see, what was going on with their figured characteristics down here and change these base characteristics to give them the most advantage in the figured characteristics, to make it better in that regard. So there we go. Now the creature has 6 inches of running, so it can run 12 meters per action. So that's 24 meters in 12 seconds, or 2 meters per second. That's actually pretty fast. It's not Jesse Owens fast, but it's pretty fast. So we're going to leave that alone. I am going to give it a little more swimming, though, because lizards, especially if you've seen lizards like the real world basilisk lizard, which can actually run across the surface of water for a distance, their lizards are often pretty good swimmers. So we're going to bump it swimming up a little bit, and I think we're done with the characteristics. Now, I've got to change the power, the basilisk's gaze. As we notice here, it costs 9 endurance. Yeah, no. The lizard should be able to gaze at you till the cows come home. So we've got to make it even worse. Sorry, guys. By doing reduced endurance, and for some reason that didn't take. And this is an innate power, so there we go. And it's warning me again that it's above and beyond the active points. So there we go. So now we come to skills tab. Wait, a basilisk will have skills? Well, to a degree, yes. Like for instance, I'm going to give it acrobatics. Why? Because it can leap and jump through trees and branches and everything just fine. It's not going to do cartwheels or turn roundabouts or anything like that, but it's pretty agile and dexterous moving through objects in its path. But acting, nah. Analyze, nah. Animal handler, nah. So I will give it breakfall, because lizards do spread themselves out and know how to reduce the damage they take from falling. And we're going to give it bureaucratics. Okay, no, I'm being silly. We're going to give it climbing. Going to give it concealment. Now, you notice what these numbers are here on the back end of it mean. 12 minus. What that is read as is 12 or less. This hero system works on a D6 based system, and 12 or less means you roll 3 dice 6, you total it up, and if the total of those dice is 12 or less, the check succeeded. So as you can see, for the acrobatics, breakfall, and climbing, it actually is pretty good at these skills. It's going to succeed more than 50% of the time. Concealment, on the other hand, is 10. It can hide, but it's not going to succeed. It's going to succeed less than half the time. Alright, so are there any of these other skills that I feel need to be on our little lizard, our little basilisk? And I think the answer to that is no. Although I could make an argument for giving it survival, but that's, to me, innate into the nature of the creature. Perks, I don't think any of those are appropriate. Talents, the same. Martial arts, definitely not. I could give it some more powers. We could enhance its senses down here, but I'm not going to. I don't want it to have particularly, um, you know, dang it, Wonder Goon, you had to go and bring that up. He asked, what about enhanced scent-based tracking? And you know what? That would be appropriate. So we're going to do tracking for the soup. And we're going to add that as one of its powers as well. So, we got that. You know what? Because we've done that, I'm going to add. There is a talent I'm going to add. I think it's a talent. Yes, environmental movement. Uh, no penalties on. This means that it does not hindered by a certain type of terrain on undergrowth. So in other words, in a setting where there's a lot of bushes and low briars and things like that, um, it will be able to just shoot through, whereas we, normal people, would be stumbling and tripping over it, unless we also have bought the environmental movement. Um, so there we go. And I'm not going to make it. Trinomad has asked about heat-based tracking. A lot of lizards and reptiles can sense heat radiances. I'm not going to make this one of them. I have this envisioned as kind of being related, as such a thing could be related to anything in the real world. I see it as being like a tegu or a monitor lizard, and they are very good at tracking you down by your scent, but not necessarily, they don't have the pit organs to track by heat. So we'll give it that, and we'll give it some environmental movement to say that it can shoot through undergrowth and underbrush. And I think we're pretty much done, except for the last little detail, disadvantages. Um, it should have some disadvantages. So right off the bat, accidental change, it doesn't change forms. It's not a lycanthrope or something. Dependence, it's not addicted to some drug or chemical or something. Probably not anyway. It does not have a dependent NPC, somebody or something that it looks out for. But it does have distinctive features. We're going to say these things are colored or otherwise shaded in such a way that people know what they are. So I'm going to actually say they're kind of colorful. Um, we're not talking mauves and pinks and polka dots and things like that, but they definitely are not colored like normal lizards. But given their background of where baby basilisks come from, that kind of makes sense. We're going to say it's not concealable. It doesn't have the camouflage ability of a chameleon. Noticed and recognized? No. We're going to say it's an extreme reaction. People know what these things are. And it's detectable by commonly used senses. So there we go. There's our first disadvantage on this thing. It has a distinctive feature. It is a basilisk, which we should probably add as a note. It is a basilisk, and people know what they look like. All right. People are aware of these critters. All right. So enraged. Enraged is kind of like a berserk. It doesn't add to your strength. It doesn't make you stronger or anything resistant to pain or anything like that. But it means you will wig out. It means you will flip out and start attacking things without mind or sentiment. At the enraged level, you target first the creature that triggered your enraged. So let's say you had enraged when you take body. In other words, when you start bleeding, you go berserk. At an enraged level, you would attack whoever cut you, whoever hurt you first. After that, you go move on to the nearest available enemy if you don't recover from being enraged. So you work through the target that set you off, you try to recover, you then start attacking enemies until you're done with all the enemies. Then, if you still haven't recovered, you start attacking friends, nearest available target. Berserk is the next level up. With a Berserk, you attack whatever triggered you, but after that, it's nearest available target. So it is much more likely that you will target an innocent or one of your friends. And so Berserk is much, much worse. And I'm going to give this thing a Berserk. I'm going to make it a common occurrence, but only 8 or less and 14 or less to recover. And that is when takes body. So when this lizard is cut or otherwise seriously hurt, or not so even so seriously, if it starts taking body, it starts bleeding, it has a chance of just flipping out and start attacking things. Which sounds about right. It's trying to get away, you attack it anyway, here it comes. Right at you. Alright? But it's a very low chance for it to go, only 8 or less on 3 die 6 again. And it recovers fairly quickly, fairly readily at 14 or less. So we'll leave that in there. Hunted? Yep, it's hunted. More powerful because everybody wants these things gone. Nobody is going to sit around and live and allow a basilisk to remain in the area. You know what I mean? So we give its hunter extensive non-combat influence. In other words, lords and ladies will back up and say, yes, here's mirrors for everybody. Go get this thing. Beat the bushes until you find it. So it's got hunted by pretty much everybody. Money is not appropriate. It's a monster. It's not a humanoid or civilized being that money would mean anything. Physical limitation, it does have physical limitation. I'm only going to make it slightly impairing though, but it has no hands. It is also and small size. So I'm basically combining a couple of things in here because any one really wouldn't be that much of a hindrance. And if anything that's not a hindrance is worth no points. But when you combine the fact that it has no hands, it can't pick up a dagger or anything like that, and it's small size, there's a lot of things it can't get to. There's a lot of things it can't do. It can't leap up, for instance, and scratch your head. It can't leap up and make you meet its gaze and that sort of thing. So we'll go with that. It doesn't have enough psychology that I'm going to worry with psychological limitations. I am not going to worry with the reputation because that tends to say, well, actually, I was thinking rivalry. Reputation is appropriate. Almost always recognized, known to turn people to stone. And I think we're done. So I've got to come back over here, though, to the basic info. And let me see. Actually, I think I came in. I've got 160 points to spend with the disadvantages and the base of 85 points. and I've only used 159. So this critter is good to go as far as I'm concerned. I should reduce that. I'm at 125. And let's see, yep. So there we have it. A nice little basilisk to potentially surprise my PCs, two of which are in the stream right now. Perhaps someday in the future when we get this game off the ground, they will be wandering out through the woods or the swamps and all of a sudden realize, oh crap, there's a basilisk. But we'll have to see. I really just wanted to do this creature in particular, uh, again, as I said at the beginning of the stream, because I've never seen it worked up in the hero system. And so I thought it would be an interesting exercise and also give yet another chance to present the Hero Designer 6 software and the Hero system and show people that even in something as complicated to put together as all of this and the characteristics, as difficult as it looks, it's really not that bad. This software handles a lot of the back end for you to make the system a lot less crunchy and just things such as that. So I really am partial to the system. I really enjoy it. I really want to extol its virtues at being able to work basically any type of genre or setting that you care to have. And you can work up any creature right down to a little lizard that can turn people to stone. So I've got my two players who are trying tuned in, talking about how Wonder Goon is saying he looks forward to being a statue, and Trinomad is saying he looks forward to Wonder Goon being a statue too. So there we have it. All right, I'm going to look in chat for a little bit for any questions or comments on this. And if there are none, it's taken about an hour, and I will call it a night and start planning and thinking about what I'll do for my next video. So, questions, comments, or dirty looks, anyone? Y'all are funny. All right, I'm not seeing any questions or anything like that, so I'm going to bid you all a good night and hope you enjoyed looking over this. And by every means. Um, oh yes, I need to change the stream title. Thank you, Wonder Goon. I forget that these things are titled. I'll do that in the after production. All right, I'm going to terminate and say goodnight. God bless, all that kind of good stuff. Y'all have a great evening.